today.
Thank you, Vicki.
Great to have you. And we will be right back on the Vicki McKenna Show. Welcome back to the program. It's the Vicki McKenna Show. And I'm going to tap into the brain, the big brain of my friend Jim Pfaff at the Conservative Caucus, who has, I mean, if I need to share your kind of your CV, you have done political organizing, political activism, at every level, and I don't want to age you or anything for let's just say for a very, very long time. So, you've been around the block, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
Including legislating. 8 years on Capitol Hill. I've run through the ringer on this stuff.
Yeah, and I know he's got PTSD from Capitol Hill, folks. And just be kind to the man. All right, so at first I want to start with what, at least on the surface, looks like a complete bonehead move by the Republican Senate to give the Democrats what they wanted, which was defunding ICE and defunding CBP. And in exchange for TSA funding, which Trump already said he was going to do with an executive order, and then bailing, and then not just bailing, but bailing kind of extravagantly, as we've seen some of them, particularly weirdly, Lindsey Graham, like posting selfies of themselves on vacation. So let's start there, because the House made a very big to-do about it by basically throwing it back onto the table for the Senate Republicans. So, do they have an excuse, or is this one of those things where if you guys can't blow up the filibuster now, it's like you want to lose?
Well, listen, I don't know that we need to blow up the filibuster, but they are just arrogantly giving the American people a finger. I mean, and Lindsey Graham's doing it too. Lindsey Graham's one of the worst members of Congress we've ever had. Very, very early in his career, he was pretty good, but he's just proof of what the sewage in Washington, D.C. will do to you over time. He is totally bought in to their idea of how they want to live their lives and the arrogant manner that they demand to be treated in. I mean, their whole goal here is their own self-interest. They don't have the interest of the American people, and yet they'll all say, I represent the people in my state. Well, that's bull. They don't do that at all. No. They're representing Washington, D.C. But back to the point, this is something that, frankly, these people want. And talking about Republicans like John Thune and them, not so much because they're like, I don't want ICE to be funded, or I don't want anything in the Save America Act to be passed. But what they want is not to have Democrats yelling at them. And I told someone else this. I don't think I mentioned it to you, but there's that famous scene in the Patton movie. I think I've talked about before, where he's just got a new dog, and he's going to speak to some British ladies at a coffee thing, and he brings the dog out of the car, and this tiny dog, much smaller than it, starts barking at it, and it cowers this bigger dog. And it really, blows Patton's mind. But that's what Republicans are. Like, Republicans really are the big dog. What they say they stand for is the closest to what most American people want. And yet they're not willing to fight for it. They back down whenever Chuck Schumer, the little poodle, just screams. And so they don't want to have to endure that. And that's also why they do what they do.
See, that's right. Because a lot of this is driven simply by laziness and the fact that they don't want to stay and work. They don't want to have to do the hard things. So that's part of this. Arrogance is another part of it. And then there's just this idea, I think it's much more prevalent in the Senate than it is in the House, that they don't have to govern. They can just be social media influencers. They can go bang the desk in a video on a podcast, and that's good enough. Ted Cruz on his podcast, that's good enough. And that is because there's no expectation. We haven't done regular order budgeting in how long? It's been like since 98. Thank you. Think about this, people. Since 1998, we have not done regular order budgeting. It has been one series of omnibus continuing resolution after another since 1998. So they don't even have a sense they're required to do anything. And they could have, the SAVE Act might be its own thing, but CBP and ICE funding, you got to be kidding me. This is one you hang in there and you fight the good fight on. And I don't care if Lindsey Graham has to skip his very weird and creepy Disney World trip. He should have just dug in and made this thing happen. And for every day it continued to go on, then you hang that albatross around the neck of every Democrat running in the midterms.
And they don't want to have to do the work. This is what's really interesting, too. What makes this even more frustrating is Democrats, by fighting against this funding and, by the way, taking the American people and TSA agents hostage over it, they literally are trying to change everything about this country. They're trying to rebuild it in an image that, frankly, is much closer to what Hugo Chavez and after that Nicolas Maduro did in Venezuela. They love that kind of control and power. That is what they're seeking. And they'll never claim that they want all the bad things that came with those countries, but they will claim that they're such good people that they need to have that kind of control and authority over America. And that's what we are fighting. And the fact that Lindsey Graham and John Thune and these guys don't understand where the battle is, nor are they willing to undertake that battle, it just shows that their laziness is what drives them. They want their $174,000 a year paycheck. They want to be able to do their podcasts or whatever else and have people think that they're really smart and important. And I just have to tell you, I worked around members of Congress for 8 years. I've been around them in various ways other than that. And I'm just telling you, members of Congress are just not very important people. We put them on this pedestal like there's something, like they say something and we really need to pay attention to it. We don't. Most of them are pretty dumb people. And I'm not going to say Ted Cruz is dumb. He does his podcast, and I think he limits it to that, and I think he needs to be a bigger fighter like Mike Lee is. He's not a dumb guy, though. He's very smart. But most of these people in Congress are dumb. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. And it scares me, the people we elect to Congress. And then they act like this, Republicans do, and it lets every one of us down, and it goes entirely against what we literally asked them for. And they ignore it entirely and give us no consideration at all.
And they run on it, and then they completely go against it. So in this so they say we'll give the Democrats what they want, then we'll get it back in reconciliation. You don't have to give the Democrats what they want. You can just go get it back in reconciliation. See, that's the thing that kind of boggled my mind. You wanted the House to eat the crap sandwich on that garbage piece of legislation that defunded ICE and that defunded CBP so that they could fund TSA when Trump's already doing it with an executive order and emergency declaration for national security. Why force the House? Many of those guys are in very tough races going into 2026. And they have a 2-vote majority. By the way, thank goodness we're going to probably save the Wisconsin congressional maps. And you want those guys to eat the crap sandwich. You got to be kidding me. You can go do your reconciliation routine, which of course they don't like to do because it's a 51 vote. They actually don't like to pass things with 51 votes because, in order to buy off the 51 votes, everybody has to, get their pork. And then, a bunch of people who have to vote for it have to go and explain it. But they can use reconciliation anytime they want.
On spending issues, listen, there are some very real limitations that the Senate rules place on reconciliation. I mean, that's fair.
They could get CBP and ICE funded through it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Even more importantly, though, the work that it takes to have a majority vote on regular legislation is extreme. They can pass anything with a majority of vote if they're willing to work through the filibuster process as it's laid out in Senate rules. And that's the point that Mike Lee's been making all this time. They don't want to do that work. I mean, they want to go off to their Disney World vacations. They're not interested in this. I think I've told you the story before. When I was working for former Congressman Tim Huelskamp from Kansas, Tim came to me one day. He says, I just was out talking to some folks, some members. The Senate was having their retreat, and every both sides have their own retreat every year, and they were going to have it at Heritage Foundation, which is within eye shot of the Senate Senate Hart office building. You can see it from Heritage Foundation in D.C. And they got a bus. They actually chartered a bus to take everyone over there. Why? Because they're old men who don't work. And that is a big problem. They're lazy at their core in the Senate. And this is not just only Mitch McConnell's fault, but he built this up for 20 years. Lay low, don't do anything controversial, and we'll be in the majority most times. But when we're not, we'll just fight through and fight back the next time. They
and
love
now we're
talking
30
about
trillion
what
in
they're
debt.
going to do and never doing it. Yeah.
We were somewhere around, I think it was around 6 trillion in debt since Mitch McConnell, 30 trillion in debt. Yeah. That's what this playbook has gotten for the United States. Before I run out of time, I wanna get to one other thing, and that is, we've got about, let me check my clock here. We've got about 3 minutes left, and that is taking a different tack. We are seeing an aggressive attack on young male voters. And when I say attack, I mean attack from people who previously had identified themselves on the right. In 2024, President Trump improved his performance among young male voters by 14 points. He did well in 2020, but he improved his performance by 14 points. That 14 points matters if you can erode it significantly. So what you see are ex-MAGA people, and I mean ex, maybe they never were, aggressively trying to turn that 14 points against conservatives, against Republicans, against America herself. Do you think that's having an impact, and how devastating could it be, and how do you fight it?
Well, it does right now, because maybe one of the fair things about that shift that we are seeing in polls is that Donald Trump went into Iran, and your average person isn't sitting around digging into the details of the policy all day long. All they see is you went to war, and you said you weren't going to go to war, and that's a perception versus reality thing. And remember, perception is reality in politics. That's the perception amongst those young people who were convinced by Donald Trump, yeah, we're not going to go into forever wars. Now, that can all be fixed between now and November. And I'm not entirely certain that group of people has abandoned Donald Trump. I think what you're finding with what particularly Tucker Carlson is doing and others is that I don't think that argument is landing well. I watched the Bibi files the other night that Tucker Carlson put out, and here's what I learned. Bibi Netanyahu is like a lot of politicians. He's got corruptions that are involved in what he did. But what I didn't get out of it when I watched it was that Israel has a ring in our nose, pulling us around with what we have to do. I think even that young group knows that Donald Trump is not pulled around by everyone. And I think they're going to see that more and more. If the election were held today, that group's going to abandon Republicans. But see, here's the thing. Donald Trump's not the problem with this. It's Republicans. It's Republican members of Congress. Donald Trump knows how to engage those groups. Republican congressmen in the midterm elections do not know how to engage with them, because they will not take the actions that Donald Trump actually has taken to meet their expectations. And other than the Iran thing, their expectations has been met. They have some negatives on Donald Trump, but what does that really mean? When you really look at it, you have to consider it an election as something different. They're not seeing that with Republicans, and Republicans have got to get their act together. I'm hopeful that Mike Johnson got the message. Screw the Senate. We're going to do what needs to be done, because we're going to try to meet those needs. I think that inspiration has hit him, and I hope that plays out continually between now and November. If it does, we might not lose the House. But it's as I said early on, and you've heard me say it over and over again, the weak part of the Trump agenda is Republicans in Congress. That's the problem.
House goes its own way. That's I think that would be a good thing, too. Jim Pfaff, as always, the Conservative Caucus, theconservativecaucus.com or .org. Great to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki.
Thanks, Jim. And we'll be right back on the Vicki McKenna Show. That is it for me on the program. Again, we're carrying the speech 8 p.m. tonight from President Trump live on both of our radio stations. We'll also be carrying it on the stream. So please dial in for that. Make sure you pay attention to that one tonight. And I will be gone until Friday. So Matt Kittle is going to be filling in for me tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.